the China leader had misled the world at the beginning of the pandemic.
No, I have not had that conversation with President Xi. Thank you.
Wow, that's some leadership right there. Translation. The Chinese have so much money invested in me and my son and perhaps other members of my family that I don't want to tick off the leader of our biggest communist enemy. Now, I know I was reading a lot into that sentence, but... So that was last month, and this was yesterday afternoon from White House Deputy Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre.
I'm not going to go into detail the private conversation that the president may have had with President Xi.
Last night on Fox News Channel's Hannity, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a conservative, said this about President Biden, calling for an intelligence review of the origin of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China.
If the Chinese are playing around with viruses, turning them into deadly killers, especially with our money, we need to know.
You know he's angry when he says, playing around. You cannot have communists playing around. And I'm just kidding because I'm a big fan of Kennedy. Do you remember the outrage that came about when President Trump announced he intended to hold U.S. government funds? Remember, he said, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to suspend $450 million while an investigation takes place on the World Health Organization, because a lot of people don't know, I mean, this audience does, you do, but there are some people that don't know the relationship between the World Health Organization and China. It was started by China. Its number one international supporter is China, followed by Bill Gates. So President Trump at the time said, we're going to hold off until we investigate the World Health Organization and the COVID virus. President Biden restored the money on day one of his presidency. So he was either canceling stuff for Americans or hooking up stuff for the commies. A lot of people questioned the World Health Organization, including Russia.
Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott calling for a congressional investigation. He wants to know if the World Health Organization helped the Chicans cover up the actual extent of the coronavirus. Now, Senator Scott wants Congress to look into whether America should keep funding the World Health Organization. We cover 15% of their annual budget, which is more than anybody else contributes. Senator Scott says the WHO needs to be held accountable for helping to promote misinformation coming out of communist China. The Chicans lied about when they knew about the coronavirus. They knew it was a problem, how many cases they had, and how many deaths. The WHO never investigated China's claims, a lack of action that Senator Scott says has cost lives. In fact, senior WHO officials praised the Chicans for their handling of the pandemic, which created a false sense of security about how serious it really was. The head of the WHO got his job with the help of the Chinese. Senator Scott, investigating all that's a fine idea, but you're going to face an uphill battle. This is an election year. The Democrats in Congress and their allies at drive-by media have one target in mind when it comes to all this, and it's not China, and it's not the WHO, it's President Trump. The truth about how this started and how it spread is the last thing on their minds, because they know, and they don't want you to find out.
And that's what makes this so scary when you think about it, and we've often talked about this on the show. When we need to find out the truth, there's fewer and fewer places to go to. The days of flipping on CNN or flipping on a major news network, that's become almost satirical now. When someone says, I don't know, let's see what CNN has to say, you're going to get giggles from that because you know what they have to say. And it's not going to be the truth because that's been proven over and over again. Think about all the people that went so far out beyond the facts and the evidence and accused people of being conspiratorial or lunatics. And they always have to reel it back in, no matter what it was. Whether it was Rachel Maddow and Trump's taxes, or whether it was the Russia thing that everybody clinged to, or whether it was their love affair with Fauci. And now they've got to back up on their coverage of Wuhan. Rush was right.
The best evidence suggests that the kind of bat
network, and there was two Chinese researchers that came forward and said, yeah, something went sideways with the virus. I'd be interviewing them. But instead, it's just the opposite. But when you hear these montages, which, by the way, started on the Rush Limbaugh show decades ago, you realize that the news media, sadly, they're all on the same page. And that page is not for we the people. Now, we will be coming back with more of our Memorial Day weekend edition of Open Line Friday. We want you to call in, military vets, active family members, 800-282-2882, because we're going to have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll be right back.
The best conversations ever? It continues right here on the EIB Network. News Radio 920 and 104.7 FM.
If you're an independent contractor, like a freelancer, a tradesman, a truck driver, realtor, it's very likely you're paying the IRS way too much money. Now, whether your business is a side gig or your primary source of income, call our friends at 1-800-ACCOUNTANT to stop being overtaxed. Now, 1-800-ACCOUNTANT helps small business owners and
that t-shirt off your shoulder.